On April 28, 2000, during a vacation in Dahab, Egypt, young Russian diving instructor Yuri Lipsky embarked on a technical dive into the infamous Blue Hole, known as the Diver's Cemetery. Despite warnings and lack of proper equipment, Yuri decided to face the depths of this treacherous underwater sinkhole. What began as an exciting dive turned into a horrific nightmare. On April 28, 2000, during a vacation in Dahab, Egypt, 22-year-old Russian diving instructor Yuri Lipsky wanted to make a technical dive to the bottom of a deep blue sinkhole. He asked for an experienced technical diver to accompany him, but everyone refused, telling him it was too dangerous, as he would only be there for 2 days. And preparations for such a dive would take weeks and require special equipment. But Yuri was determined. Despite the refusals, the lack of special equipment, and only 2 days to prepare, the young diving instructor decided to do the unthinkable. The Blue Hole is a massive natural sinkhole just a few meters from the shore, located a few kilometers from the city. Its underwater structure reaches depths of up to 130 meters, with a sloping bottom leading gradually to the edge of a cliff before plunging abruptly into the depths. Often known as the Diver's Cemetery, the approximately 130-meter deep underwater sinkhole has the highest number of diver deaths in the world, with estimates ranging between 130 and 200 deaths in the last decade, making it one of the most dangerous diving spots on the planet. It is unknown how aware Yuri was of this, but what he certainly did not know is that his stubborn dive would soon turn into a nightmare. Equipped with his diving gear, Yuri entered the water around 5 p.m. To document his journey, he used a video camera strapped to his head to show the dive from his own perspective. Several other divers were present, as seen in the footage. What the camera does not show is that, according to witnesses, Yuri was not carrying an extra diving tank. This was a critical mistake. Without it, he was at risk of nitrogen narcosis, a lethal condition that can suddenly make divers feel drunk and incapable of making rational decisions. As Yuri descended, he slowly began to drift away from the group, and the number of people around him decreased. Soon, it was just Yuri and his rolling camera. At first, everything seemed fine. The sunlight grew dimmer as Yuri slowly sank into the ocean. Whether he was aware of it or not, every few meters, his consciousness began to change. At 10 meters below, his lungs now held only half the air volume they had at the surface. However, he was constantly breathing increasingly dense air, and his bloodstream was absorbing more nitrogen. Recreational diving guidelines prohibit traveling below 40 meters. Yuri was descending far beyond 40 meters, but worse yet, he was not actively monitoring his depth. Within seconds, Yuri began to sink uncontrollably. He desperately tried to slow his descent, but it was in vain. Inflating his buoyancy control device was useless. He was too heavy. The water pressure rapidly increased, which in turn increased the pressure inside Yuri's lungs. He started to panic. The water's surface continued disappearing above him, and nitrogen narcosis affected his mobility and distorted his mind the further he fell. In what seemed like seconds, he passed 80 meters, more than twice the limit for recreational diving. In a desperate attempt to ascend, he tried inflating his buoyancy control device even more, but it was already full and suddenly burst open. The air escaped from his chest, sealing his fate. Finally, just over 91 meters deep, Yuri landed face down at the bottom of the sea. At 5:11 p.m. on April 28, 2000, the camera stopped recording. However, surprisingly, this was not the last thing the camera would capture. About a week later, on May 5th, the camera would turn on again, this time in the hands of a local Egyptian technical diver named Tarek Omar. What he discovered that day would send chills down your spine. In just over 7 minutes, Yuri had gone from standing on a sunny beach to lying dead at the bottom of the blue hole, and he had captured it all on video. Now, it was a chilling discovery waiting to be found. The one who found it was Tarek Omar. As a local diving expert with vast rescue experience, Tarek Omar had the unenviable task of being the person to call when accidents occurred at the world's deadliest dive site. After Yuri failed to return from his dive into the blue hole, Omar received the call he never hopes to get. Omar treats every emergency as a rescue mission, but, unfortunately, too often, they end up being merely body recoveries. Yuri Lipsky's case was no different. First, Omar had to enter the blue hole and assess the situation. The site is so vast that this took an entire day. Omar says he eventually found Yuri lying face down at the bottom of the ocean, motionless. There was nothing Omar could do. It was evident that Yuri had been dead long before anyone knew he was missing. On the second day, Omar re-entered the water, this time to recover Yuri's body. Now, all Omar had left to do was figure out what had really happened. He noticed several things about Yuri's condition. One of them was that, according to Omar, Yuri had about 12 kilos of lead on his weight belt, which, combined with his other gear, suggested that Yuri was carrying too much weight for such a dangerous dive. Omar also noticed the rupture in Yuri's buoyancy compensator, as well as the fact that he apparently entered the water with only 12 liters of compressed air. But that's not all. Additionally, Omar saw Yuri's camera. Initially, he assumed it was broken because that particular type of camera was only supposed to function at a maximum depth of 75 meters. But considering it part of the evidence to collect, he brought it to the surface along with Yuri's gear and lifeless body. Mistakenly, Omar thought this part of the case was over. It was only after contacting local authorities and sorting through the remains that Tarek Omar made a chilling discovery. The camera had survived. Not only that, but the video it had captured during the dive was still intact. Omar was likely the first person to see what is now one of the most watched diving videos ever recorded. Despite how devastating it was to watch, Omar says the footage confirmed many of his suspicions. He now believes Yuri died due to 3 main causes. 1. His equipment made him too heavy. 2. His vest failed. And 3. Most importantly, he was clearly suffering from acute nitrogen narcosis. But even watching the video and seeing his worst fears confirmed was not the hardest part for Omar. Yuri's mother was in Dahab. In fact, she was the one who contacted Omar, saying she had not heard from her son and was worried about his safety. Omar later said that if he had known about the video footage, he would have destroyed it. No mother should have to see her own son drowning on camera. But instead, Yuri's belongings were returned to his mother, including the camera with the heartbreaking footage. Omar says he is still haunted by the thought of knowing that Yuri's mother had to see what even complete strangers find impossible to watch. But in reality, he had the chance to prevent Yuri from making the dive that ultimately took his life. Tarek Omar had met Yuri Lipsky when Yuri was walking around Dahab, trying to find a diving partner. Like the others, Tarek strongly warned Yuri not to attempt the dive. He knew from experience that something like this was very likely to happen, but tragically, like everyone else, Yuri ignored his warnings. Instead, Yuri became, in a very dark sense, the most famous diver in the world, at least at that moment. While Yuri's death may have discouraged many from putting on a diving suit, it has also served as a profound warning within the sport for over 2 decades. Today, the cliffside near the Blue Hole entrance is filled with tombstones and small memorials. Yuri Lipsky's tragedy, documented on his own camera, became an eternal warning for divers worldwide. His mother, heartbroken, received her son's belongings, facing the immeasurable pain of watching his final journey. If you made it this far, thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, click the like button and subscribe for future content. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.